So hear now the words from the prophets, Isaiah chapter 52, verses 7 to 10. May they be a promise of comfort and hope to us as well.
How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of the messenger who announces peace, who brings good news, who announces salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. Listen, your sentinels lift up their voices. Together they sing for joy, for in plain sight they see the return of the Lord to Zion. Break forth together into singing, you ruins of Jerusalem, for the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem. The Lord has bared his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God.
You know, just as the Hebrew people experienced the uncertainty of exile and didn't know how long they would be living in Babylon away from their homeland, as Ken said in his introduction, many of us have felt a bit like we're in exile in this COVID time. And certainly that was the case for St. Andrews Wesley in mid-March.
And us too.
Yeah, but in a different way, I suspect, because, as you know, we have the seismic upgrade that's happening, a construction project, and no sanctuary. And so right around March 15th, when we were told that we couldn't gather as a congregation in the sanctuary, and we couldn't even be in the hotel ballroom where we were worshiping, or at St. Paul's Anglican where the evening service was, or the salons where Jazz Vespers was, we were stuck. We were really stuck. We had no place. We didn't have the technological equipment. We didn't have the know-how as to how to do online worship. And if I remember correctly, one evening you and I were just in conversation about the whole situation, and you got this look on your face, and it was like this light bulb went off, you know, the proverbial light bulb went off, and you said, hey, why don't we do this together? And that was like beautiful feet carrying good news and a message of peace. It was really encouraging because you have this gorgeous sanctuary. You already have the technological equipment and people who know how to run it. You already had an online ministry for how many years?
Oh, I think 6 years.
6 years?
Something like that, yeah.
And it was in a little different form, but nevertheless, you've been doing this for a while, and you were experienced hands, and you invited us in. So when you made that invitation, and it was approved by the ministry team and the worship committee here at Highlands United Church, it came to us as a great relief and an incredible blessing. And I just want to say we are tremendously grateful for that.
It has been a pleasure, and that's the thing with collaboration. You invite someone in, and I mean, to be fair, we've done this, but nothing like this.
Right, it's different.
It's very different. So the collaboration, we've grown as much in the collaboration as well. And that's the way with collaboration. The circumstances change. Relationships change, and everything changes for everyone that's involved.
Naturally, you took the lead, but I think we were learning together.
Absolutely, in a lot of different ways. I mean, I've learned a lot. I approach this differently because we have connected with one another, but with other congregations, with other people around BC, around the world, really. Mm-hmm. And there's a sense in which we're worshiping together in a different sort of way because you're here, and you know, I've also discovered that something in me has changed in terms of being leading worship. At first, I would look at the camera and I would look at this space and it felt very alone.
Yeah.
It felt very disconnected.
There's a real transition.
But now, there's a different sense for me. I know you're there. And I can actually feel it. It's actually changed my prayer life because there's a new sense in which we're connected even when we're apart. And that's a significant difference.
Yeah. as you were speaking, that's exactly the phrase that came to my mind. I mean, it's become a catchphrase during the pandemic, connected even while apart. But it's so true. Like, we are discovering that in so many ways, so many valuable ways. And you know, when the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, were in Babylon, living in exile, and they received this news that they could return to the homeland, it was great news. It was a beautiful moment, but they also knew that they were not returning to the place that they had left behind, because that place had been destroyed by the Babylonian Empire. The temple had been razed to the ground. They knew that they were going back to their homeland, but it was up to them to recreate and rebuild what that was going to be like for them as a people of faith and for the future. And it also reminds me that as we're living in this pandemic, we're changed in this process, exactly what you're saying. We're changed through all of this. And so when Highlands goes back to worshiping as a community and St. Andrews Wesley goes back to worshiping as an online community, it will be different. And eventually, hopefully, when there is a vaccine and everybody is safe and we can regather for congregational worship, it's going to be different yet again.
Yeah.
Because I heard the Anglican bishop say yesterday on CBC, the Good News of Canada, he said, you know, if our churches aren't changed from this pandemic, we've really missed out.
Yeah.
We've lost a good opportunity.
Well, and I've been saying that. When you're faced with adversity, or uncertain times, an exile, a pandemic, my phrase is, it's important not to squander a good crisis.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that the pandemic is a good thing. Not at all. But God is in the middle of it. God is mixed up doing what God does in the middle of this unfamiliar territory, which means that we have an opportunity to discover something about ourselves, something about each other, something about about life and what it means. And that's hugely important. And in this moment, I mean, what a beautiful thing to learn under duress to turn right when everything in your body and everything in your heart and soul is saying, batten down the hatches, to say, well, how about we just kind of not and open up to the ministry of another?
You know, as you were saying that earlier in our conversation just before worship, the image that came to my mind was the sea anemone. Yeah. And you know how you poke a sea anemone, it automatically closes. Yeah. Well, the pandemic is poking us, and our natural response is to want to do, just as you're saying, shut down, close off. And yet, Highlands gave the example of, no, we're going to take the opposite gesture and open up. And that was a beautiful thing.
And I got to say that lots of people were a part of that inclination. The one who is fearless is Andrea Irwin. Like, she is fearless at this stuff. and so I gotta tip my hat to her. It's a beautiful thing to practice something that goes kind of against some of our instincts, because I think that's a godly thing, is that willingness to be vulnerable even when the world and circumstances are telling you not to.
It's an act of faith, it's an act of trust, isn't it?
Yeah. It's storming outside, but let's dance.
And you guys are a great dance partner. So thank you, Andrea, and everybody for being fearlessly willing to take in the stranger. And you know, it is an act of trust. I mean, it did help that we have had about 10 years of collaboration in worship leadership together through clergy events and conferences and BC Conference, when it was still in that manifestation. But also, it's an act of trust because this is who we are as the United Church, the United Church. We have a common history. We have a shared story. There's a theological range, obviously a theological buffet, but there is a common theological stream anyway, and we are united in common values, ethical values that we want to live out in the world. So this is really who we are called to be as the church, to have moments and partnerships and collaborations just like this.
And the Pacific Mountain region, which is the new manifestation of
Yes.
Unity Conference that you
Right.
produce, has a whole component of encouraging exactly that. And the grant for Highlands Online and United Online it comes from them.
Right. Right.
And I suspect that we were both involved in other manifestations of collaboration, things like, and other congregations that join us and other people that join us online through like First United Church.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a variety of congregations on various steps in the affirming process, which is a broader piece of work that United Church has taken on. And over the last 5 years or so, in our collaboration to build a school or to fund the building of a school in Chuitziribal, Guatemala. We've worked together, and undoubtedly some of those collaborations will continue, and we'll find new ones. I mean, as long as Doris, Julio, and Eduardo are around, there will be collaborations going on in Guatemala, and I know that you've reached out to Sandy Goldie and John Caritas, who work with Drawdown, the climate action, which is a greater work than any of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Individually.
And as you're saying, so our connections and collaborations are not just programmatic, they're also around individuals. So, for example, Gary Patterson served the United Church, and so he was shared by everybody, or he shared his ministry with everybody. And then there's Bob Schenk, who was a minister for a number of years at St. Andrew's Wesley.
And Minister Emeritus here.
And is Minister Emeritus here, and he and Pearl are members here of this congregation, so there's that shared relational connection. Don Robertson was a minister here for a number of years, and now Don and Sandy often come to St. Andrew's Wesley. You reminded me the other day that Jacqueline Scott was the administrator at St. Andrew's Wesley 20 years ago or so, or approximately. And so, there are all these we're connected to each other in so many ways. And then there's somebody sitting right over there named Jen Cunnings, who has a ministry that is way beyond St. Andrew's Wesley and supports the children, youth, and ministry program in the region, and also touches the lives here at Highlands United Church. And I have to say, because I'm not sure it's going to be said later, so not only will this be the last day that Highlands sees Jen online, it's going to be the last day we all see Jen online for some time, because Jen's going back in for her second knee surgery, which is no fun, but it's really important, and we're very glad that it can happen so that she's not carrying around incessant pain. And it's because of that incessant pain that she is such a grumpy individual. Really Grinch-like. If she can manage a smile, she can manage a smile, it's a wonderful thing.
But there's
So
also
blessings to you, Jen.
Yeah. And there's also some personal connections between, like, we share people, and like our writer in residence and theologian.
You have a writer in residence?
We have a writer and theologian in residence,
Wow.
Janet Gear, and she belongs to
I've heard of
us
her. Yeah.
in that way, as she may be also married to you, but she belongs to us.
She doesn't belong to me.
And also, like, Colleen Chambers.
I've heard of her, too.
You've heard of her too? She's the chair of our COVID-19 response team, and she's working with you guys as well.
In the same capacity.
In the same capacity. But there's lots of people that we share, and they go back and forth.
And blessings be for that.
Yeah.
And there's lots of juicy overlap in the relationships and in the programs that we share. And we've also recognized that for everything there is a season.
Yeah.
So last March, when we were at the beginning of this conversation, and you said, shall we try this together, we had no idea what that would look like, and we had no idea for how long it would be.
Yeah.
We were hoping at that time that the pandemic would have sufficiently passed that it would be safe to come back together as a congregation in our sanctuaries by July, August.
Yeah, sure.
And here we are. Here we are.
Yeah.
And it's going to be another long time, I think, before we can do that. And so for everything there is a season. The last 6 months have been a fabulous collaboration, but we've also said that we would check in with each other on a regular basis and say, is this still what our congregations need? Is this still life-giving for our congregations? And yes, I think it is in many ways. But I also think that there is a call and a desire to be a community together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 6
In a
months
particular
together
way.
has been stretched, and we've been blessed and enriched, and we turn to a programmatic year. September is often a natural turn to a programmatic year.
Yeah.
And the goals and the challenges and the opportunities that are very particular to congregational life. Yes, we're a united church, but we're also congregations with different character, different styles, and different challenges that need to be addressed directly. And we need the opportunity to kind of puzzle through those.
Yeah.
And so there's a natural necessity to focus on that.
Exactly right. And I actually think that that's healthy.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good sign that communities of faith want to be together. It means that there is a genuine relationship. It means that as a community of faith, there is a natural bond that holds us together. And it's not just the faces that are familiar, it's that you're gathered together in a particular way with a particular expression of our Christian faith and way of being in the world. And so blessings be, praise be for all of that. And then also how wonderful that now, after 6 months, we can celebrate this beguiled by beauty theme and hold a mirror up one congregation to another and express characteristics that are beautiful, that maybe our congregations just aren't aware of in the same way that another might be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. You know how sometimes people, friends of yours or something, and you know them in a certain way, but they look in the mirror and they don't see the same thing you see.
For sure.
Right? Sometimes they don't, and so congregations are like that too. And we've had an opportunity to kind of hold up the mirror to one another and say, you see what I see? This is like, do you recognize the beauty that's there? And it's a huge opportunity to kind of see ourselves more clearly through the eyes of another.
And I think it's so important to say and to hear. So I'm wondering if I can begin.
Sure.
And hold up a mirror to you and the team, the leadership team, and the congregation of Highlands United Church, and share a few things. So I would begin by saying, Highlands United Church, do you know how beautiful you are? There is an energy here that is contagious. You have a passion, of course, for music and for singing for all ages. You have determination and determined energy to commit yourselves to the needs of this community, this neighborhood, and to the world. You have an energy to work toward authenticity. So, for example, you don't just have the talking stick by Daryl Yelton in the chancel as a piece of decoration. Every week you speak to that as an act of reconciliation, and you can see that that is an authentic embodiment on your part. You know the carver's name. You know a little bit of the story, and that story changes who you are as a community of faith. Highlands United is bold. Fearless is your word. Bold in your vision that is not stuck in the past, though there's been such a thriving community here for decades, but is really oriented towards the future. An example of that is your online ministry that started years ago. I mean, who was thinking of an online ministry that started years ago? And I have to admit that when I first heard it, I thought, okay. But I am eating my words now because it's absolutely essential, and you've been able to do it so creatively. And so I could go on, and I just hope that you know how beautiful you are in your bold, authentic, visionary leadership in the church. The church needs congregations like Highlands United Church.
Well, thank you, Dan. Did you hear that, folks? That's a mirror for you. And I will never forget, Dan, to hold it up for you. I'll never forget early on in this collaboration, Rian was standing behind the pulpit, and she was talking about the pandemic, and she was talking about how the pandemic has started to make us do stuff that we always told ourselves was impossible, right? And she started to list it off, right?
Right.
Driving way less. It's impossible. We're doing it. And she just listed them off. A guaranteed income for every household. Impossible. We're doing it. Working from home. You can't do that. We're doing it. And she just listed off, and it felt so, I was like, go girl. Like this is, whoa. She's saying it as she sees it. And that's a thing that I have seen consistently through the ministry. Is like, be bold in saying it as you see it. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, a daring thing and a beautiful thing. In the last few months, we saw, a couple of months ago, we saw in the paper a picture of members of St. Andrews Wesley handing a check over to Rainbow refugees. And as an expression of a passion for walking with people who are in vulnerable positions. And I see that in you. And you know, we've heard a lot of testimonies from each other's congregations, people that we don't know, and there's another person, and I don't know that one. That's a St. Andrews Wesley person. And to a person, they speak theologically willing to chase down the questions. And that openness to living into those questions has been, that's a thing you do. It's who you are. And I was thinking about also you're an eclectic bunch. Mm-hmm. Eclectic in music, eclectic in worship styles around like dance. I'll always remember that video of those dancers on the face of the Squamish chief.
They're waiting for us to join them.
Yeah, well, they're going to wait because. But that as an expression of worship, that is so cool. That is so eclectic. And it's a beautiful thing. And how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news on the side of the Squamish chief. And you know, next week we will be gathered online. You will be gathered online.
Yep.
And we will be gathered online. And we will discover that there are people who are with you, will be with you, and will be with us, who were not with us when we started this collaboration.
That's right.
I know because I've talked to some of them, and online, and how beautiful is that they will bring good news to each of our congregations separately, and I pray, dear God, that we are open to that. And so we will have another beautiful aspect to ourselves separately as well.
Exactly. So again, going back to what you said earlier, the tendency might be to close up.
Yeah.
But then the practice is to remain open, to remain invitational, to remain welcoming, and allow ourselves to be changed, because it's in the change that life happens. Mm-hmm. And so once again, thank you for being open to this creative collaboration. It's been fun. The planning for the services has been involved, and it's playful work.
Yeah.
It's playful work, but it's a work of love.
Yeah.
And we're so grateful.
As are we.
You.
And we missed out last week. We know we missed out.
Yeah.
Daryl Nixon retired after 35 years
Actually,
of music.
only 37 and a half years.
Oh,
37 and a half.
Oh, okay. Well, 37 and a half years of music ministry. And we missed out because we were celebrating the ministry of Carol Smith here.
Yes.
But I have really enjoyed to work with Daryl, and we're going to let him play us into prayer.